Today we will be studying form and specifically how to create form when you are drawing from life. What I'm looking at right now is some of the origami that I made last week during our origami project. So this is my setup right here. My paper is on my table and I'm looking directly at my origami that's set up in front of me. So roughly this picture replicates the angle that I am viewing the origami at while I'm drawing. And the first step when you're drawing, when you are trying to create accurate proportions, is to map out the large shapes first. And hopefully at this point that sounds familiar to you. So the first thing I'm doing here is mapping out all of the larger shapes that I can see in my origami. After I'm happy with the way the proportions are looking for the two larger shapes, I'm going to go in and start to add the medium-sized details, and that's what you see me doing here. It's important to take note of all of the angles while you're drawing and also to continuously be looking up. So don't look at your paper for too long because you will forget what it is that you're supposed to be drawing on your paper and your brain will start to make it up. And here you can see I'm moving towards some of the finer, small details that are in the little still life that I've set up of origami. And then the next thing I'm going to be moving into is adding some shadow. So now that I have my contour lines all mapped out, the next thing, and what's really going to create the illusion that these are three-dimensional, is adding some shadow. So the same way I was paying attention to the shapes to create the outline, I'm now paying attention to the shapes of the shadow and taking care to carefully shade in all of those shadows and not pushing too hard at first because I want to map out first the light gray tones before going back in and pushing a little harder with my pencil to add in the darker shadows. And while I'm doing this, I'm also keeping in mind that I want to preserve some of the lighter areas or the highlights. And then this could be a nice finished study, but what I chose to do to finish mine was to add in some black ballpoint pen just in those areas that are very, very dark in the objects that I'm looking at. So I'm not creating an outline here. What I'm doing is I'm going back in with a ballpoint pen and just finding the very darkest areas in the objects that I'm looking at. And by creating a range of value or a scale of light to dark, you start to create the illusion that you're looking at a three-dimensional object. And like I said before, this step is optional if you would like to create your shading all in pencil or perhaps in one color of colored pencil, that would work as well. But the point of this week is to study drawing from life and to start playing around with the use of shadows.